We'll get you to unmute, Marc, and we'll just test your audio.
All right, good.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah.
All right, super.
You can hear everything good on your end from us? Okay, we're going to get started. First, we're just going to do the draw for speaking order. So I'll let our timer go ahead and do that. We've got a fancy little spin wheel here. So Steve, you'll be speaking first. Marc second. Peter third. Phil fourth. Ahmed Youssef will be fifth. And that means Juliuss, you will be speaking sixth.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we'll begin. My name is Lori Chakowski. I'm here from the Chamber. We are a nonpartisan organization, and this meeting will proceed as such. This is not a debate. We are here to provide information from the candidates to the voters. Some still undecided, many actually. So we ask the candidates to speak to them, the voters, and not take up time speaking of or to each other. We would like to confirm that all candidates are confirmed per Elections Canada. We recognize that we are on the traditional territory of the Katzie First Nation and Kwantlen First Nation, understanding, of course, that we have attendees from various areas. We respectfully acknowledge that the many nations who are represented by the urban First Nations, Métis, and Inuit population in the Fraser Valley and Metro Vancouver areas. I'm going to, I think that was all I had, turn it over to our moderator, longtime volunteer in the community and two-time past president of the Chamber of Commerce, Ken Holland, and he will be in control of the questions and the rules that were presented to the candidates prior to coming online today here. So go ahead, Ken.
Thank you very much, Flory. Good morning, panelists. For those of you that don't know me, I am Ken Holland. There's a couple of you I haven't recognized yet, but I'm looking forward to this. So as Flory mentioned, this is a non-partisan all candidates forum. There'll be no questions from the floor. The questions are already starting to come in, but that's fine. We've already started to handle some of them. Each question will be directed to a specific candidate, and then you'll have 1.5 minutes to start. I'm going to introduce you in order of alphabetical order to start with, and then we'll go in for your opening 2-minute statements with the way it was just drawn. So representing the Rhinoceros party, we have Peter Buddle. Peter, nice to meet you. Representing the Conservative Party, we have Marc Dalton, the incumbent. Representing the People's Party of Canada, we have Juliuss Hoffmann. Nice to meet you, Mr. Hoffmann.
Likewise.
Representing the NDP, we'll have Phil Klapwyk. Nice to meet you, Phil.
Nice to meet you.
Representing the Independent, Steve Ranta. And representing the Liberals, Ahmed Youssef.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for stepping up and helping your, or trying to help your community. So your opening statements, we'll start with Steve Ranta. Steve, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, my name's Steve Ranta. I grew up here in Maple Ridge and I've spent most of my life here. And I'm very interested in the well-being of my fellow citizens and our community. I'm very glad that organizations like the Chamber today and the Maple Ridge Climate Hub a couple of days ago are running these all candidates meetings. They're a tremendous opportunity to see the people in some action who you're going to be voting to represent you. And I think it adds to more honest discussion, or can add to more honest discussion, because none of us have the burden of being celebrities or artificially promoted messiahs like the leaders do. And I hope that as many people as possible can watch this. And the climate discussion, which is linked at the Maple Ridge News or at Maple Ridge Climate Hub, or just YouTube Maple Ridge Climate Debate. Today, I understand we're going to be discussing mostly economics issues, and I think that's a good counterpart to the other major issue, which was mostly dealt with on Wednesday at the climate debate. I attended SFU, and I got a Bachelor of General Studies, which was possible in those days, economics, philosophy, and history, and I've been interested in those three topics ever since, and the way it plays out in our political system. My work experience has been mostly as a teacher, but I also took 4 years off during that time to be a full-time grievance officer. So I got to know a lot about labor law and labor lawyers on each side and contract language. I've also worked in the mill, of course, growing up here in Maple Ridge, in construction, in a tree nursery, very proud, one of the best tree nurseries in the world, just down the road from me, run by a friend of mine at the time, as a lifeguard, swim instructor, and as a musician. And when you're a professional musician, you're participating almost like an entrepreneur. And the word gig economy comes from the word gig, which is the word in the music for having a job, short-term job. I lived through some very good times: affordable housing and transportation, clear skies, easy to find good jobs and work.
Thank you, Steve, for your time.
Thank you very much, Steve. Mr. Dalton, running for the Conservative Party.
Well, thank you very much for hosting this event, Chamber, Ken, and thanks for the work of the advocacy that your organization does in our community. It's invaluable, and I've been, it's been a pleasure over many years to be able to be connected with you. And I just, I'm Marc Dalton. I've been the member of parliament since the last election. I was the MLA for many years provincially, and it's been a tremendous honor to be able to represent our community and individuals. My first priority actually is not parliament, but it's actually individually, one-on-one, hearing. I get thousands of calls, emails, which letters that I respond to, and conversations. Even the past number of months, I don't know, we've been going door to door, meeting thousands of people. So that's important, and that actually has a lot to do with the initiatives that I brought forward, the things I advocate for, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be issues regarding the health crisis, the opioid crisis, whatever it may be. It's what I'm hearing on the ground from the community. And sometimes I even go to bat, perhaps even against my own party, to fight. That's one thing I've learned. You've got to learn how to fight, to be tenacious on issues. And I feel that I've been tenacious on issues and have been able to see lots of results here in our community as I've served both Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows as the elected official. So it's a privilege to be here, and I'm here to, Conservatives are here to advance and to support small businesses, because when you succeed, our community succeed and this country succeeds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dalton. Running for the Rhino Party, Mr. Buddle, your opening statement.
Hello, Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge citizens. Many thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for holding this discussion and for welcoming participation by all parties and candidates. The other 26 Rhinoceros Party candidates from across Canada join me in our joy to represent constituents of the country we love. Canada thrives with diverse voices and personalities who bring wildly original ideas to the fore. Since 1963, the Rhinoceros Party has celebrated the ridiculous and the absurd as it mirrors the contradictions and imbalances of the society we share, underlining the necessity of a sense of humor, especially in difficult and confusing times. While you may feel prejudiced to regard the Rhinoceros Party as a mere joke, you may prefer to consider the radical solutions are needed in modern times. Canadian politics was brought up by the majority of the constituents with whom I corresponded while canvassing for signatures for consent to be on the ballot. The word that I heard most without solicitation was accountability. It may very well be that a big shakeup is required for our home and native land to flourish. The system and the status quo is clearly not functioning to the satisfaction of the public. Whoever you elect should be terrified of your wrath. There are a lot more of you than them. And if they're going to be and call themselves public servants, it's up to you to make them live up to it. Vote Rhino. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buddle. Up next for their 2-minute opening statement, running for the NDP, Mr. Phil Klapwyk.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Thanks to the Chamber for organizing this event. I look forward to the conversation today. My name is Phil Klapwyk, and I'm running to amplify the voices of Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge residents in Ottawa. Since March 13th, 2020, like many people, I've worked from home. The global COVID-19 pandemic hit us extremely hard here in British Columbia. And I watched over 15,000 artists and technicians that I represented lose their jobs overnight. But immediately I went to work collaborating with industry stakeholders to create a rigorous set of protocols to protect film and TV workers. And we were successful. The motion picture industry came roaring back and is now a driving force in BC's economic recovery, even right here in Maple Ridge, where yet one more Christmas movie is shooting in our downtown core. But what we've learned from COVID is that this pandemic has disproportionately impacted those from racialized and marginalized communities. For the Indigenous, the elderly, those living with a disability, gig and part-time workers, and many, many more Canadians, the systems we built to support people through COVID have failed and have left many behind. But the solution starts right here in Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge. It starts with committing to open dialogue, dismantling systems that don't work, and rebuilding them to protect all Canadians. We can do this, I know, because this is how we reconstructed BC's motion picture industry. It took a lot of collaboration, compromise, and persistence, but it is possible. As we emerge from the pandemic, we need to build back better, and better is possible if we make different choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klapwyk. Up next for the Liberal Party, Mr. Ahmed Youssef.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to the Chamber for organizing this meeting. My name is Ahmed Youssef, and I'm running as your Liberal candidate for Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows. I have a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's in international relations. I've worked in an international trade capacity for the US federal government. I am a private business owner operator that I run from my own home. So I feel the pressures when it comes to making payroll and, of course, all the other bills that need to be met and requirements and commitments that we make as business owners and operators. I also currently serve as a city councilor here in Maple Ridge and have advocated for businesses from day one, be it their safety and security in the downtown area, or be it, for example, when the pandemic hit and my friend Kathy Pring and Lisa Lenham both reached out to me and wanted to capitalize on the assistance that was available for businesses to meet their rent commitment that was offered by the federal government. Having to advocate for businesses is exactly why we should be focusing on and moving forward with the recovery that's been achieved thus far from the pandemic. At 92%, our economy is functioning today, and we only have 200,000 jobs to go before we are back to pre-pandemic levels. I look forward to being of service to my community, both through Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows in any capacity, especially in this case, going to Parliament Hill and ensuring that our voices are heard loud and clear and that our concerns are addressed. Advocating for Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows is the only reason that we should all be here, regardless of party lines and affiliations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last one up, Mr. Juliuss Hoffmann, running for the People's Party of Canada.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everybody. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Juliuss Hoffmann. I live in Maple Ridge, and I have been, for most of my life, been self-employed. The People's Party of Canada is a relatively new party, and we are comprised of candidates of all types. We are women, men, of different backgrounds, stepping up to support a party that advocates common sense. We also have a sense of urgency here. We're not career politicians. And this is a call of duty to go ahead and try and bring a voice back to Canada. We hear a lot of times, you know, Canadians say this, Canadians say that, but we don't feel like we're represented. The People's Party of Canada allows me to vote according to my conscience. We don't have to toe the party line. Everybody is for freedom, the freedom of choice, which is paramount. And in the end, we want to go ahead and preserve something for our children's future. We worry about the future. And that's what we're guarding. That's what we want to protect. That's what we want to nurture, and that's what we want to save. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffmann. Moving forward, I'm going to be asking questions. I'm just going to randomly choose people. There's going to be no order at when we're done here. We're going to have the closing statements from yourselves in reverse order than when we started. So I'm going to start with some questions from our members that affect the local area. And the top question is, and this one's going to go to, we'll start with Phil. Phil, this is your first question. What are your top 3 priorities if elected?
Thanks for the question. I believe this is a critical moment for our community. It's our opportunity to set direction for a Canada transitioning out of the pandemic and build a better future for everyone. And I believe that we can build a future where we tackle the climate crisis, putting the environment at the center of every policy decision we make. And one where we tackle affordability in the full spectrum of the lives of Canadians. And where we take immediate and concrete action on reconciliation, respecting and honoring Indigenous rights, titles, and cultural practices. Where all levels of government can work collaboratively, uniting and creating a better Canada for all Canadians. We can do better. New Democrats are ready to rebuild better than ever, and better is possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Same question. What are your top 3 priorities if elected? Goes to Mr. Yousef.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. My top 3 priorities are, of course, protecting the environment, because without that, we have no other foundation on which to build. Secondly, housing for persons with disabilities, seniors, and low-income families. Having a roof over one's head is a basic start to life. As we know, the basic human needs include shelter, right there at the top. Thirdly, local jobs that offer sustainable economic growth. And when I say sustainable, I mean in both the economic sense as well as the environmental sense. Having that ability to employ locally not only stimulates our local economy and diversifies our tax base, currently in Maple Ridge, dependent 93% on residential taxes and only 7% on business and commercial taxes. By having these local jobs, we will collectively reduce our carbon footprint, be able to alleviate the pressures off of the homeowners for taxes, and of course, be able to have more of our younger population stay within the boundaries of our communities. Not only will that cause a more communal feel and more of a belonging sense to our community, but it will also provide services that are desperately needed in our communities, from shopping, retail, to all the spectrum that those offer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hoffmann, what are your top 3 priorities if elected?
Well, number 1 is we need to get rid of this passport, vaccine passport. We are faced federal workers, we've got a lot of people stepping up. The risk that they're having is losing their jobs. We got to basically, we've got to open the conversation up. There's too many people silenced on the topic, and we're hearing opinions. We've got to get the facts. The next one, I think, is restructuring the government. We've got to stop the wasting of money, the needless, wasteful programs. We have to go ahead and bring some common sense policies and reduce basically the involvement of the federal government. It's an organization that is not really addressing, I don't think, the local people's interests. They're looking and playing and participating in a global. They're basically pandering to outside unelected bodies. And then, of course, I think we need to address the climate change. We need a conversation again. We need to go ahead and not be regurgitating opinions. We need to get the science. And from there, we can go ahead and have some real solid policies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dalton, what are your top 3 priorities if elected?
Thank you. So first and foremost is to get through this pandemic. It's been a tremendous challenge for individuals and for small businesses. And I've been there alongside the entire way, advocating to help, to whether it be SUS or SERB or others, to actually make it much more flexible, the programs to help small businesses, to help individuals. Been there for the travel industry, to advocate, to present petitions to because they've really struggled. Even the cruise ship industry, we've lost millions of well, there's been millions of passengers that have in the past gone through. This has caused tens of thousands of job losses, and that impacts us here even in Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge. I advocated for technical stops, which essentially allowed a cruise ship to come land. They wouldn't disembark. They would just do that technical stop by law, by American law, but the NDP and the Liberals, the NDP provincial government and the Liberal federal government wouldn't do anything. They said, no, we're not going to allow these stops where people would not even disembark. They continue going. The other thing is to grow our communities economically and infrastructure. I think it's essential. And finally, I would say, most importantly, is just continue to listen, because that's how I'm able to move things forward.
Thank you very much. Mr. Buddle, what are your top 3 priorities if elected?
Thank you very much, Mr. Holland. The very top priority, I believe, in which I've heard for many years from politicians, is to bring clean water to Indigenous communities. It's been promised and put aside many, many times. So that would be number 1. I have lived in Indigenous communities for years of my life as a teacher, and I've seen the effects of the difficulties of clean water supply for the citizens that live there. Second of all, I would agree with Mr. Hoffmann that the restrictions associated with the COVID-19 crisis must be lifted. That means no vaccine passports, then that's what that means. That has to change. We have to get back to regular life. Third, I think that a 10% cut in pay for members of parliament would be a really clear indicator that the austerity that Canadians are generally forced to submit to should start at the top and should start with people in leadership positions. So I think a 10% cut in pay for MPs would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Ranta, what are your top 3 priorities if elected? You're on mute, sir.
Top three, climate change, number one. Number two, inequality and poverty. Number three, economic strategy. But they're all connected. Canada has based its society, especially in recent years, on the needs of international banking and international corporations. There's absolutely no benefit anymore to us having government subsidize long-term fossil fuels export projects. Yet it seems like all of the major parties are still emphasizing that. Government and the economy exist to have a happy, free, prosperous citizenry, not for the purposes of capture by foreign interests, especially billionaires. We don't need that, and it's hurting us. And economically, all the economies that we're competing with that are doing well are planned economies, and many of them are still democracies. Germany, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, China. We're facing huge problems the way our economy is now, with dead-end jobs for most of our young people. A lot of the capital that we've accumulated is going into real estate speculation and stock market speculation instead of investing in small businesses and innovative projects. And we've got to turn things around. Canada is woefully behind in healthcare, transportation,
Please, that's
economic
time.
planning.
Thank you.
We need change.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to another question from one of our members. This one goes straight to the point. How will each of the party's platforms affect our taxes, both as businesses and as homeowners? And Steve, might as well start with you.
Starting about 25, 30 years ago, Canada embarked, the federal government started lowering corporate tax rates. Now we've got extremely low tax rates, 15%. But that has not resulted in increased investment. A lot of it has flowed overseas in terms of foreign corporations making excess profits, not benefiting Canadians at all. We should put the corporate tax rate not up just a couple of percent like is being proposed lately, but back up in the range of 29% and give tax exemptions for corporations and small businesses who are providing helpful local services, providing local employment, providing training, and investing in green technologies and high tech. It's not going to happen unless the federal government takes the lead. Canada's way behind on this. We're going to fall off a cliff if we keep being dependent on fossil fuels, exports, and real estate speculation. It's covering up the fact that we're very far behind most other advanced countries, and we have to take major steps to fix it now.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Klapwyk, how will each of the party's platforms affect our taxes, both as businesses and as homeowners?
Thanks, Mr. Holland. This is a great question, and thanks for the opportunity to respond. New Democrats are concerned with the full spectrum of affordability, and taxes are obviously part of that. And we know that Canadians are facing an affordable housing crisis. There's issues of affordability woven into everything, like drug prices, dental care, tuition fees, childcare, and so much more. Affording daily life has become a challenge for so many people, and increasing the burden of tax on those people seems like an impossible, and it should not happen. Our platform intends to reduce costs for Canadians right now so they have the power to fuel our economy as we emerge from the pandemic. And if we want different results, we need to make different choices. And our choice is to make life better for Canadians, to support our small businesses, and to ensure that the ultra wealthy and the large corporations pay their fair share. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffmann, how will
Yes.
each of the party's platforms affect our taxes, both as businesses and as homeowners?
We want to propose a lowering of the tax rate and to simplify it. We want to basically have two basic categories for personal income tax. And we want to simplify the process. When I talk to people, tax time is a complicated, stressful time. And the federal government needs to go ahead and work with people rather than be like Revenue Canada is very much like a police force in a lot of people's eyes. And it's stressful when dealing with them. So I think we need to simplify it so we're not spending more on interpretation of the tax laws, and reducing so that people can actually put money back into their businesses, can go ahead and spend money on things that they need, and not waste it, you know, not or at least it's a topic of having to have somebody interpret their income tax returns for them and spend money accordingly. So that's what we propose.
So you're talking about financial literacy.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yousef.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. First and foremost, our plan is to introduce a new labor mobility tax credit to allow workers in the building and construction and trade sectors to deduct up to $4,000 in eligible expenses when they need to travel or temporarily locate for a job, for a tax credit of up to $600 a year. That will allow for one of our most prominent sectors here locally to be able to function a lot better and be able to deduct a significant amount of funds for them to be able to work elsewhere. Aside from that, I personally believe that the entire tax bracket structure needs a revisit to ensure that the middle class is not being unfairly taxed while the ultra rich pay next to nothing, and at times quite literally nothing. And the same for businesses. Those whose revenues are below a certain threshold and should not be paying as much and should be paying a discounted rate to allow for that business to grow, an incubator model, if you will, while those that are raking it in can certainly afford to be responsible corporate citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dalton, how will each of the parties' platforms affect our taxes, both as businesses and as homeowners?
Well, we believe as much as possible to keep government's hand out of your pocket. It's not how much you make, it's how much you actually take home, either as an individual or as a small business. And so we just believe in very competitive tax rates in order to help businesses grow and to keep our tax system modern and competitive. We believe in reducing red tape because regulations, red tape, they can just add, it increasingly adds to cost. So that's really important. And also, for one thing, we are not going to be taxing the sale of your home. And this has been in the Liberals' platform. They've talked about this, and I think that's a very serious thing to go move forward in. You know, people depend upon their assets for their retirement and to go forward. We will not be touching that. And we just want we want to give incentives for businesses and tax break to help them to grow. And as they grow, then we prosper. Unlike what's happening currently right now is not only with taxes, but because we are going about $426 million in debt every single day, what that's causing is an inflationary pressure. So people might notice, businesses might notice, individuals might notice that everything is getting a lot more expensive. And that has to do with out of control spending. And we believe in growing the economy so we can help to see this reduced.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Mr. Buddle. How will each of the parties' platforms affect our taxes, both as businesses and as homeowners?
Thank you very much, Mr. Holland. Corporate tax rates are at historic lows, 15%. So it's time for personal taxes and for small business taxes to be lowered to compensate so that ordinary Canadians can have more to spend on products that we produce here. To balance this, corporate taxes can rise. since research and development are also at historic lows. And while we're at it, executive bonuses can also be dropped since they already seem to have enough yachts and foreign tax havens and villas in exotic climates. The Canadian public have tightened their belts long enough on their end. And if it's austerity for those who do the heavy lifting, then the administration can also have one less lunch martini, one less trip to the high-end club, which they write off as an expense. In short, the Rhinoceros Party would institute the dawn of trickle-up economics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to point out, you guys are doing a great job compared to what I saw last night. One more question from the members. Do you think your party's platform on the environment goes far enough for Canada to meet or beat our climate targets by 2030? Will you push for local and national solutions to climate change? Let's start with Mr. Klapwyk.
Great question. Thank you very much, Mr. Holland. This is something that I have heard time and time again from the residents of Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge as I'm talking to them on their doorstep. They are deeply concerned with the climate crisis we're facing. And although Canada has said the right things and made commitments at the global climate summits, our government has consistently missed its targets. In order to seriously tackle the climate crisis, we need to take action now. And our communities are where most clearly we feel the impacts of the climate emergency. And one of the best places that we can invest to rapidly reduce emissions, save money, and make life better. We're going to work with the provinces, municipalities, and Indigenous governments to create a national crisis strategy to make sure that communities have the resources they need to combat this climate crisis. But one thing we won't do is continue to subsidize oil and gas exploration, production, refining, and transportation. This savings of $18 billion would be better spent supporting the transition to renewable energy rather than on profitable oil and gas companies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dalton, do you think your party's platform on the environment goes far enough for Canada to meet or beat our climate targets by 2030? Will you push for local and national solutions to climate change?
Yes, and the Conservatives got a comprehensive plan for climate change and the environment. It's been vetted by Navius institution, and you can read about it on conservatives.ca/plan. And we will meet the targets, and at the same time, we are not looking to bring a drag on the economy as the other parties their plan will do, but will actually help to incentivize and help it to grow. One important feature that we have is the investment. We're going to give a lot of incentives for our industry, for innovation sector, because on areas like carbon capture, hydrogen, nuclear modular, different features like this that can not only benefit Canada and help us to grow economically, but also help the entire planet as we export this. So this is important. And also we're looking at incentives for individuals as they apply the plan. And so we have an excellent plan, and I believe it compares very favorably with the other parties.
Thank you very much. Mr. Buddle, will you push for local and national solutions to climate change?
Thank you, Mr. Holland. I can assure you that the Rhinoceros Party has absolutely no plan whatsoever to do anything about the economy, but that's the policy of the party. And in my own case, personally, I'm extremely concerned about the environment, and it's been a lifelong goal for me. I was a Cub Scout as a child, and that was instituted into me as a young person very early in life, that our relationship with the environment is critical. Now, I've also watched during that same time, since my childhood until now, the environment slip and become very problematic. We have a lot of problems with pollution, air control. We saw it in bold colors this summer with the forest fires, the heat dome. So the entire climate around the earth is changing, and I believe that it is scientifically proven that it's human involvement that has caused this. We do need expert solutions, and I would do anything possible to improve the quality of the environment in Canada and around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ranta, will you push for local and national solutions to climate change?
I have been in the forefront of pushing for local solutions. In the last 2 years, in conjunction with my colleagues in the Maple Ridge Climate Hub, we've been engaging with Maple Ridge Council and planners, also Metro, about planning for less transportation by car. And Maple Ridge is the most dependent on car in the Lower Mainland. We have to do more to plan our building, our housing, our transportation, and our service hubs to transition to a greener economy. We're stuck right now in the 1950s, and it can't last. If we don't do something, there's going to be huge penalties on citizens of Maple Ridge for driving cars. It's just going to come. We need a lot of options. And as for nationally and provincially, I'm honest enough to tell you that anybody who doesn't say stop the LNG projects in BC is not going to have a climate plan that's going to do anything to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Parties can say they're going to cut subsidies, but right now, one of the parties represented here, their provincial government is putting billions of dollars a year into the LNG projects. We're going to make it impossible to meet climate reduction plans. Not only that, it makes no economic sense. It's clear from the International Energy Agency, the most highly respected economic source, that we're going to have to reduce production of LNG by 55% in order to meet world targets for 2050. Never going to make money on the LNG projects in northern BC. It's going to be an albatross around our climate change.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Mr. Yousef, will you push for local and national solutions to climate change?
Absolutely, Mr. Holland. First and foremost, allow me to dispel this myth that we're not going to be meeting targets. That is simply untrue. The NDP environmental plan has received an F grade. The Conservatives can't bring themselves to acknowledge that climate change is real to begin with. Our plan is the most achievable, the most realistic, and I intend to work diligently to ensure that it's delivered in full. Mr. Tom Mulcair himself called our plan marvelous. Mr. Andrew Scheer called it bold and thoughtful. As a lifetime member of ARMS, raising 3 Earth Rangers in my own home that keep me quite honest when it comes to the environment, having that local organization engagement is paramount to me. Working with the local and regional organizations and governments will ensure that our voices are heard loud and clear on Parliament Hill. Through my involvement with City Council here, we were the first council to bring in the implementation of EV chargers in multi-residential homes. Working with the Metro Vancouver Climate Action Committee, I know and realize that our biggest emitter is transportation, followed by housing. Being able to put in policies whereby we put density along transit routes, be able to bring in mass transit that is low carbon to our community to alleviate our dependency on cars, and then step into the STEP code, the BC Building STEP code to level 2 to ensure that our buildings are also not emitting as much emissions as they currently are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone. I'm going to move to a big question now, and a few of you have already brought it up, so here we go. The global economy was hit hard by the pandemic. While some sectors in BC weathered this storm, post-pandemic challenges remain, particularly around the increase of costs and the administrative burdens associated with tax increases and regulatory complexity. So, if elected, what will be the economic priorities for your government to help small business recover from the impacts of the pandemic and help them grow in the future? Let's start with Mr. Ranta.
Well, small business needs a couple of things that it's short of right now. One is capital, research and development, and skills. And one is a prosperous society around it. Canada has been negligent in making sure that capital serves small business, and entrepreneurs. We have more rich Canadians sitting on $10 million of personal wealth per capita than the United States does. Almost twice as much as Germany, UK, and Japan. We are a greatly unequal country. And this hasn't resulted, this accumulation of capital at the top hasn't resulted in more investment being available. It's resulted in real estate bubbles in the stock market and bubbles in the stock market, and it's resulted in huge real estate and housing costs, which really hurt the ability of small business even to pay for facilities or rentals and start up. And then on top of that, it's a penalty in terms of wages. If the cost of housing doubles or triples like it has in the last few years, that means small business is going to have to pay at least double the wages in order to attract people and keep people working. We need to change our economy so that there's not as much accumulation of dead wealth at the top by putting in estate taxes on people who make over 10 million in order to spread the prosperity around.
Thank you very much. Mr. Buddle, what would you do to help small business recover from the impacts of the pandemic and help them grow in the future?
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Our taxation practices really do need an overhaul. A meaningful probe into the Panama Papers and all the other tax evasion techniques employed by those benefiting most from Canada's infrastructure and legendarily literate population is long overdue. Canada can learn a thing or two from the RICO statutes that were brought into the American legal system to free up money hoarded by white-collar crime, which is many multiples of the cost of street crime. The perpetrators of white-collar crime do not have the excuse of low-level criminals. They know better and simply hire expensive attorneys to justify their avarice. Fixing the system that permits such imbalance would greatly add a necessary jolt to the excessive tax burden on ordinary Canadians. Other things that could be done would be to lessen the restrictions on individuals regarding COVID. The necessity for, or the claimed necessity for travel passports and any kind of vaccination passport, I think will have to go in order to make our society work better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I'm just going to interrupt 1 minute here. If we go back, once we finish this question, to Juliuss Hoffmann for the environmental question, because he was missed on answering that one.
I apologize for that.
Thank you.
The environmental question.
The last question you asked.
Well, let's do that right now then. Last question I asked.
Number 6, do you think your party's
party's
platform on the environment goes far enough for Canada to meet or beat our climate targets by 2030? Will you push for local and national solutions to climate change?
Am I on?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you are.
Okay. We're not going to push for the basically the 2030 targets. Basically, 2030 sounds like in the UN Agenda 2030, which is an extension of UN Agenda 21. We're not going to go, we don't agree with climate alarmism. The climate's always changed. In fact, we're in trouble if it doesn't change. It is a direct correlation of the sun. We're a moving entity. So is the sun. We're hurtling through space. So we're going to have changes. It's only obvious. The whole issue of carbon, well, we have to have a discussion about it. Because the thing is that from what I understand, carbon is actually the building blocks for a lot of living organisms. And let's, instead of going with outside international organizations that are promoting and promoting this this idea and scaring everybody. Let's focus on pollution. There's many aspects to it. It's not just carbon footprint. So we don't want to pollute the lakes, the rivers, the air. It's obvious, and those things need to be guarded. We need common sense policies that address these issues. But let's have an open conversation. Let's get everybody talking, all the experts, and have science behind the topic. Thank you.
Thank you. While I have you here, Mr. Hoffmann, what will be the economic priorities for your government to help small business recover from the impacts of the pandemic and help them grow in the future?
Yes, and it goes back to the vaccine passport and the mandates. Basically, they are restricting the way local businesses, particularly, I was talking with somebody who had a restaurant. They had seats that they couldn't fill because of this. The other thing people bring up is they want the government to get out of the way. They're the best people, the most qualified to grow and expand their business. The federal government's just to provide an environment for them to thrive in. And that's what we should be aiming to do. Looking at ways so that they are unimpeded in their quest to go ahead and expand and grow and hire and buy and sell, right? They have skin in the game, and we got to respect that. And policies that affect the way that they operate, that shouldn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yousef.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Yes, you don't need to repeat the question.
Perfect, thank you.
I appreciate it. Well, you know, Canadian small businesses are predominantly run by parents, mine included. So the $10 a day childcare is instrumental in ensuring that our small businesses grow and create the jobs and drive our economy. When the pandemic hit, the Liberal government moved quickly to provide support to businesses so they could keep their doors open and work on the payroll with benefits like the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. As we finish the fight against COVID-19 and build a stronger, more resilient economy, we will continue to support Canada's businesses and workers. That's why we're going to provide more support to Canada's businesses and workers by extending the Canada Recovery Hiring Program to March 31st, 2022, so businesses can hire more workers and Canadians can get back on the job. Continuing to expand the Canada Workers Benefit to support 1 million additional Canadians in low-wage jobs, helping them return to work, and increasing benefits for Canada's most vulnerable sectors. Tackling Canada's growing labor shortage by expanding pathways for talented workers to immigrate to Canada and increasing labor participation with targeted incentives for low-income workers and seniors and people with disability, and increasing the supports for reskilling programs for Canadians entering into the trades market, introducing a new labor mobility tax, as I mentioned earlier, to allow workers in the building and construction trades to be able to make a significant deduction as they travel and temporarily locate for jobs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Klapwyk, what would you do to help the recovery of small business from the impacts of the pandemic?
Well, certainly. Thank you very much, Mr. Holland. Certainly, the NDP were really critical in the discussion of supporting small businesses over the past 18 months. And we should note that the initial offering for the wage subsidy started at 10%. And if it wasn't for the NDP, it would never have gotten to the 75% that it was. And our plans start right there with our universal pharmacare will save employers $600 per year in extended benefits for their employees. Now, I owned and operated a small cafe on the Sunshine Coast, and I know the pressures of dealing with inventory, training and payroll, engaging and growing my customer base, and at the end of the night, having to still do the books to keep the CRA off my back. And I can't even fathom the increased pressures of our small businesses during the pandemic. We know that small businesses are an engine of job creation in Canada. And we know the local shops are an important part of every single community, and they need our support now more than ever before. The NDP are planning on investing in the small businesses, continuing the wage and rent subsidies until they're fully reopened. And we're going to pay the employer portion of EI and CPP for new and rehired staff. And we're going to put an end to credit card gouging by capping high credit card merchant fees at a maximum of 1%. We have a plan to streamline access to government export services to make it easier for small businesses to grow and break into foreign markets. And we're going to provide a single point of contact to help ease regulatory processes and support compliance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dalton.
Now, the past 18 months have been extremely challenging for many of our small businesses. I dealt with many of them, often in tears as they were on the brink of losing everything. The Trudeau government failed them in many ways. Criteria that made no sense, inflexible terms, reliance on landlords to get rent relief, and so on. Our detailed plan to get Canadians back to work includes our major initiatives, which include the Canada Job Surge Plan, which pays up to 50% of the salary of a new hires for up to 6 months. A Main Street tax credit for Canadians who personally invest in a small business over the next 2 years. A Main Street business loan, providing loans of up to $200,000 to help small and medium businesses in hospitality, retail, and tourism get back upon their feet with up to 25% forgiven. We will do whatever it takes to get people working and get the economy back on track. Canada's Conservatives got us out of the last recession. We'll get us out of this one also.
Thank you. Sticking with this same subject and sticking with Marc Dalton, just had it here. What investments would you make to encourage and support innovation in British Columbia?
Okay, sorry. Okay, so it's paramount that Canada's next government takes measures to remain competitive in a global marketplace and ensure that we get out of this recovery at the head of the back. We saw this happen under the previous Conservative government when we were the one that was started with first of G7 countries to emerge from the last global recession. To create jobs and get Canada back to work, we need to attract investment. To do that, we need to make Canada a great place to build a business. So for example, we will introduce the Canada Investment Accelerator, which provides an investment tax credit for any capital investment made in 2022 and 2023, with the first $25,000 to be refundable for small businesses. We also know job creation in Canada is held back when Canadians are blocked from starting and building businesses by unfair competition from market-dominated firms. Some Canadian, but many are foreign. We want to ensure a level playing field by making foreign tech companies pay their fair share of taxes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yousef, what investments would you make to encourage and support innovations in British Columbia?
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Our plan includes a heavy dose of engagement with the provinces to ensure that they are the ones that lead the innovation. Luckily, here in BC, we have numerous examples, such as right here in our backyard, Left, that started with one person and is now a global company. E1 Molly, also right here in Maple Ridge. Templar Marine in Kelowna. Harbor Air Seaplanes right across the river. These are BC innovative companies that are at the very leading edge of the clean economy initiatives that we want to see come to fruition. I myself have worked with some of these companies, and moving forward, I would be a strong advocate for a green economy. I would like to see a complete balance between the two G's, as I call them, growth and green, in the way of pushing forward our BC innovation, working with local governments, local organizations, and ensuring that our BC homegrown innovators are getting the reach that they need to, not only on a national level, but also on an international level. Having led many trade delegations and having worked on an international trade front, I would be a strong advocate for BC-based companies to do business at their potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Klapwyk, the question goes to you. What investments would you make to encourage and support innovation in British Columbia?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Holland. This is so incredible and so near to my experience. I've worked in the film and television industry for 25 years, and I've worked with people that have built systems and created new ways of doing things that have taken off and have exported all across the world and set the standard right here in BC that is now globally accepted. We're such a leader in innovation in so many industries, and there are so many opportunities for the federal government to directly support innovators. The New Democrats are committed to putting Canadian workers at the center of our robust strategy to drive innovation and boost competitiveness now and in the future. And as we recover from the pandemic and grow our clean energy economy, we're going to protect and create good jobs for families. We have to build back for better, which means ensuring that our economic recovery sets us up to succeed in a low carbon future. We're ready to position Canada for the next boom, making bold public investments directed to innovations in clean energy, climate resilience, social infrastructure, and energy efficiency in communities across the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Buddle, what investments would you make to encourage and support innovation in BC?
Thank you again, Mr. Holland. I've heard good ideas from the other candidates here on this topic and on other topics too, and I would like to extend my thanks to them for bringing up good ideas. Specifically, Maple Ridge has a long-term reputation as an innovator in the growing of marijuana, and for the byproducts of that are hemp fiber, which can be used to make much stronger bricks for building, making buildings. So hempcrete is something that would be an excellent idea in British Columbia with our booming cannabis trade, but also things like 3D printed housing could be something that would really bring down the cost of housing, because all these things are integrated in our economy. Yesterday, I read an article that showed an African woman engineer who created bricks stronger than concrete from recycled plastic. We could take innovations along these lines to make a better tomorrow as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hoffmann, same question. What investments would you make to encourage and support innovation in BC?
Interestingly, we do have another example of innovation in Pitt Meadows, and the company is called FVT Research. What they do is they do conversion of mining equipment from diesel-powered engines to electric drive systems. They have gone from research and development to actually now competing and taking orders to convert different equipment on the global market. They started, of course, with research, and the mining industry had a portion of their revenues go back into research and development. And I think this is actually a very good point. The government spends money, and it a lot of times there's examples of waste, and I don't know that spending more is always the answer, but however, various fields can go ahead and support the very systems of innovation, and those need to be explored. And then of course, you know, the different overreaches of government, the municipal level, the provincial level, talking with various people who own businesses and are trying to grow businesses. These very aspects are the actual problem for growth and innovation. And I think we need to have, again, a conversation with everybody involved to go ahead and come up with some very good and streamlined ideas.
Time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ranta, what investments would you make to encourage and support innovation in BC?
Canada certainly needs a lot of innovation, and BC is in one of the worst positions for the future right now. Traditionally, BC's economy is being built on forests, fish, and mining, including fossil fuels. Fish are just about done commercially. Forests are going to be done. The more we log, the more fires there's going to be. And for health reasons, we just can't put up with it. We're going to have to spend more money replanting our forests than we're going to be able to take out. And what we need is a strategy that goes all the way from the federal government to the provincial to the local governments, but also involves business, of course, and labor. Labor's got to be involved in this because they understand the needs of workers, and they care a lot more about training and high value jobs, which we're going to need. We also need to motivate our education system. But here's an example of some problems that Canada has, which we really have to get over. We're almost at the bottom of the G20 countries in the amount of money we invest in R&D. And a lot of it is because our corporations don't invest in R&D. We need a high corporate tax to penalize the corporations that are just exploiting our economy and not putting anything back into it and trying to squeeze the last bits out of forest, fish, fossil fuels, and real estate speculation. And we need to reward companies that are innovative, that train workers, that use high tech, and are helping us prepare for a greener future. Doing things like spending billions of dollars to subsidize, and you can't get away from it. The NDP provincial government is subsidizing with billions of dollars.
That's time.
The
Thank you.
project is backwards.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, we are just over the halfway mark. I want to thank you very much. And I want to take this opportunity to welcome the viewing audience and thank you for informing yourselves. And that's it. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them up on the chat. I do get to see them here. A lot of times the questions that we prepared are very close to your questions. You don't have to text me, just use the chat. Thank you very much. Okay, next question. This is a big one. BC's economic prosperity depends on international trade, transportation, and infrastructure. Establishing transportation strategies is critical to the economy. These plans must integrate the various transportation modes and include investments guided by long-term strategic interests and economic growth. My question to you is, what is your plan to address the Biden administration's Buy American policy? And we will start with Mr. Buddle.
Thank you. There are many sticking points in Canada's trade, for example, with softwood lumber with the United States. We could just as easily use those products, use other building products right here at home to make affordable housing for Canadian citizens. It's a big planet, and we could find better markets if we shopped around than simply relying upon China and the United States. Yes, those are very big markets. Yes, they're lucrative markets, but they're not the entire planet. And frankly, we must look after what we do here at home first. We should be innovating far more in our economy as a country, interprovincially. A quarter of the Canadian population lives in Quebec and another quarter lives in Ontario. A lot of innovation happens there that would greatly benefit people here in Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge. Likewise, what we do here in Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge could easily benefit the rest of the country. So I think
we lost you there. You're on mute. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Who hasn't been first yet? Mr. Yousef. Still not first, but you're second.
I'll take it. Thank you very much. Second place. Nevertheless, it's a very good question. And to address the Biden administration's Buy American policy, as someone who not only studied international relations, but worked in the field, especially and specifically on balancing trade, the overarching principle in international relations is reciprocity. I would advocate for a Buy Canadian program, built in Canada, made in Canada. We must encourage our manufacturing sector, which tends to be some of the greenest manufacturing out there, and give Canadians the jobs right here. We cannot continue to export raw materials and turn around and pay a premium for the finished product. That's not sustainable economically or environmentally. Now, to address the portion of the question dealing with the various transportation modes, I myself, having worked with, again, a BC company that is right here in our beautiful province in Kelowna, that is very innovative, Templar Marine, creating an all-electric boat. They are able to today provide us with what was called the short sea shipping model that was brought up a couple of decades ago. By encouraging this type of manufacturing and this type of innovation right here, we would be able to collectively reduce our carbon footprint, ensure a smoother and much more environmentally friendly movement of goods and services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dalton, what is your plan to address the Biden administration's Buy American policy?
Great question. We're very close to the border here, and I know that many people and small businesses here in our community that buy and sell to American companies and customers and travel to provide services. While the US have been good neighbors, they sometimes flex their muscle, and that can have serious negative effects right here at home. A case in point, we had the Trudeau Liberals mishandle the softwood lumber file, and we lost the Hammond cedar mill, which as a result, and lost many direct and indirect jobs that went with it. I visited the mill not that long ago and was just very impressed with the technology, and it's just very sad to see it go. We need to defend our local industries that trade in the US and hold the US government to the commitments that they signed under CUSMA. And we need collaboration between all levels of government, Canadian businesses and our US counterpart. For example, I was on the Canada-US Interparliamentary Association. I was one of the vice chairs, and we engage with senators, both Republican and Democrats, as well as congressmen and congresswomen. And we often hear for the first time about a problem in Canada-US relationships. And you know what? They understand it, and they still want to become our allies, questioning the White House and State Department. We need to keep doing that, keep those relationships, and I've been glad to be part of that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hoffmann, what is your plan to address the Biden administration's Buy American policy?
Well, first of all, I don't have a lot of knowledge regarding that policy. So the first thing, of course, is to read it and understand it and analyze it. But we've got to remember the Americans are our friends and neighbors. And when we negotiate with anybody, we do have to always remember we're representing Canada and Canadians. So we have to always keep our best interests as a priority. Let's promote Canada. Let's promote our businesses, our industries, buy and sell Canadian first. We have also other countries to explore and open up trading possibilities, again, with Canadian interests. And Canadian businesses are our priority. They're our primary concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Klapwyk, what is your plan to address the Biden administration's Buy American policy?
Well, it's very clear that the U.S. is our largest trading partner, and it's a very important relationship that we have with them. And even though this Buy American policy is questionable according to the WTO, the last time they went down this road, we sought to get exemptions just for Canada and Canadian products, and that doesn't seem necessarily to address the root of it and actually go after the whole of the problem. During the pandemic, we've seen the deleterious effects of of not having enough domestic production and manufacturing facilities. Clear examples are personal protective equipment and vaccines. And we need to invest and build that capacity so Canadians have a choice to buy Canadian. You know, New Democrats are seeking to stimulate Canada's manufacturing sectors. And we've made a commitment to require the use of Canadian-made aluminum, steel, cement, and wood products for infrastructure projects across the country. In our Canadian clean technology sector, we will require Buy Canadian procurement to support Canadian manufacturing of batteries, energy storage solutions, and alternative fuels like biofuels made from waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffmann, what is your strategy to deal with Biden's Buy American policy?
I think I already answered.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
Mr. Ranta, I forgot about you last time, so I remembered you twice this time.
All right.
Good for the Americans for putting in a policy of Buy American. It makes so much sense not to be transporting stuff around the world and relying on just-in-time inventory. We've especially seen that in COVID. And we're going to see it more with agriculture, with the droughts down there, with trying to get food even into Canada. We need a Buy Canadian policy, and we need a Buy Local policy. Unfortunately, unlike the Americans who refused to join the Trans-Pacific Partnership and its successor agreement, and unlike the Americans who refused to join the European Economic Agreement, Canada in the 2010s sold out most of its rights to Buy Canadian and to Buy Local. Even at the municipal level, a municipality can't spend more than $10 million without opening it up completely to European corporations. And the head of the European Union was crowing that that was the most advantageous trade agreement European countries had ever signed. Advantageous for us, advantageous for them, terrible for us. And the three major parties during the 2010s really sold it out, and I don't hear any of them admitting a mistake or saying they're going to change that. All this Buy Canadian is just rhetoric. Second, transportation. We don't want to be hewers of wood and drawers and water. We don't want to build railways to send just be drained like a third world country. We've had enough of that.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I got a question here regarding housing. This is a fairly important one. Housing affordability supports inclusive growth and builds communities. In many parts of Canada, rental housing is in desperately short supply, while affordable housing solutions generally fall on the shoulders of provincial and municipal regional government bodies. The federal government also has a role to play in this issue. If your platform addresses lowering the cost of housing, to whom is this being directed? First-time home buyers, demographics, where is the most needed to have the most impact? Mr. Dalton.
Yes, I mean, I do hear this issue being brought up quite a bit at the doors. I got three children. Two of them are have young families, 2 grandkids, and so it's really important. Our plan is to get 1 million more housing units in supply within the next 3 years. It's ambitious, but we have a strong plan with this. We will be, for one thing, we've got 37,000 buildings and federal government buildings. We're going to be releasing 15% of this to release it in order to provide property for building homes. We're also going to be with foreign purchasers. We're going to be stopping those buyers if they're not planning on moving here, but we will allow them to come to Canada in order to build purpose-built rental properties. So that will help alleviate some of this. We're also going to make it easier for Canadians to get mortgages, extend the length of mortgages up to 7 to 10 years, so they can get those mortgages. Also, when individual or family is transferring mortgages, they won't have to go through the stress test when they change bank to get a more favorable mortgage. So that's all money in the pockets of individuals. So we're also going to be addressing unfair and corrupt practices that have driven up the prices, such as money laundering, and we'll be partnering with municipalities and the private sector to bring in new rental units into the market. And finally, well, looks like my time's up. Let it go.
Mr. Hoffmann, if your platform addresses lowering the cost of housing, to whom is this being directed?
Well, the cost of housing is, of course, we're talking about supply and demand. And our policy, of course, with regarding immigration, of course, is to lower immigration because that places a significant demand on two major centers, Vancouver and Toronto. That is the two primary locations that new immigrants go to. And as we can see, the housing prices have skyrocketed accordingly. People's debt ratios regarding the amount of money that goes towards their mortgages and rent according to their income is not in balance. It's been out of balance, particularly in those two major centers. What can the government do? Well, the thing is intervention. These various programs and so forth, they're trying to interfere with an artificial, or sorry, a natural process. I mean, you're not going to get people to suddenly drop prices on their houses. You know, the market has climbed, and it just will not come down to a normal level. It just isn't going to do that. People are going to be losing or walking away. They owe more than what their property's worth. Isn't going to happen. But the thing is we can relieve pressures that are causing the increases. And the other thing too is CMHC is allowing people to get into debt, and it causes them to get risk.
That's time. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Yousef.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Our plan aims to target the people with disabilities, the seniors, and first-time home buyers by offering incentives, as well as, of course, building 1.4 million new homes and taking action against housing speculators. That is something that I would certainly advocate for and ensure comes into place. Because, of course, now that I have had the lens of the municipal government, I know exactly how the intricacies work. And I would also advocate for further empowering municipal governments to allow for investments to come in, such as multifamily homes and the desperately needed rental stock that is lacking in our market, not only to bring down the overall price of housing by bringing more supply online, basic economics, but also by providing the rent to own initiative that we're bringing forward so that our younger population can have a pathway to home ownership and to be able to build up that equity and provide a roof over their heads. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ranta, same question. Where is it most needed to have the most impact?
The most impact would be to stop supporting any of the major parties. And this has been something which has been mostly hidden for decades. All the parties have been involved in trade missions to China, and they've always resulted in real estate speculation and money laundering, hardly in any productive investment. If you talk about immigration issues like one of the candidates did here, all the major parties are going to call you a racist right off the bat. If you question whether we should have 400,000 immigrants instead of 250,000, they'll call you a racist. They're doing the jobs of ultra-wealthy billionaire Canadians and multinational corporations and money launderers. Let's bring immigration back down to 250,000 and see what happens. And we've got to realize that the parties will find any loophole, no matter how shameful, to enrich real estate speculators, Canadian and foreign. For example, the federal Liberal housing minister last year said, we've got to get foreign students coming back to Canada in order to restore the rentals market in Toronto. That means that the foreign students aren't being brought here to help enrich our culture, our education system, or do them a favor. The main purpose is to enrich land speculators, Canadian and foreign, and this corrupt system has got to be got rid of, and the parties are all in on it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Klapwyk, if your platform addresses lowering the cost of housing, to whom is this being directed? Where is it most needed?
Thanks very much, Mr. Holland. You know, the last 3.5, 4 weeks, I've been talking to a lot of people in Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge on their doorsteps of their rental places. And, you know, there's a lot of problems there. I've been told about, landlords refusing to fix floorboards that give way in a rental unit. Another person told me she's battling a rat infestation in her rental unit. And a third couldn't get help dealing with black mold. You know, these are people that are seniors, people living with disability, and they're exposed to the harmful rental market that's out there and the inflated costs of rental properties. You know, we've had chances to fix this. Over the last 6 years, the Liberals haven't addressed affordable housing whatsoever. And it's almost laughable to hear the NDP platform being spoken by my Liberal colleague here, because we're addressing affordable housing for seniors and for those living on disability. And we've got plans to make it easier for people to enter the housing market. My kids right now, the way it is under the Liberal government, will never be able to afford a house on their own. And my daughter and my granddaughter and my soon-to-be grandson that's on the way will never have a place to live to call their own. So we need to fix this problem. And we've got a plan to address that and target those demographics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sticking with the housing issue, if elected, would your government make changes to capital gains if invested in purpose-built rental properties? Mr. Buddle.
Thank you. I'm not 100% sure I understand what the question is, but I will say a couple of things on the subject of rental housing. I've been a renter here in Maple Ridge, though the 21 years I've been living here, and I've been rent-evicted twice. As I shop for another apartment, I move into a smaller place for a much larger amount of money every month. By increasing wages for Canadians, putting more money in their hands to keep up with the expenses of living in Canada and in this part of the world in particular, I'm afraid that much like in the 70s, when the banks recognized that, oh, there are two adults living in the home, so we can raise the cost of home ownership and mortgages accordingly, and put the woman to work. What we would see is a bounce back. If we saw that the Canadians were being paid more, there'd be a bounce back in the cost of rent and housing. So I don't think that there's a simple solution to this question or any of the housing questions that are being brought up today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Klapwyk.
Sorry, 18 months and I can't find the mute button. So yeah, you know, I saw a report yesterday that said that 50% of the residents of Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge are commuters, and they leave the area to go to work, mostly in Vancouver and Burnaby. And we know that when people leave our community they live in to go to work elsewhere, our local businesses suffer. And we believe that working people should be able to afford to live close to their workspaces. And young people should be able to stay in the neighborhoods they've grown up in, and seniors shouldn't be forced out of the communities they've spent their lives in. Canada is in the midst of a national housing crisis impacting every area of the country. Average rents rose in every single province last year, and 1.6 million Canadian households spend more than 30% of their income on housing. We simply need more affordable, purpose-built rental housing stock to keep people in their community. And our long-term solution to the affordable housing crisis is to ensure that more affordable rental units are built across the country. We're going to invest in creating at least 500,000 quality, eco-friendly, affordable housing units across the country over the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dalton, the same question.
So a number of things. One is that if people own rental properties, that if they purchase another rental properties, we will not be charging capital gains. We want people to continue to invest in rental properties. And another issue is that in the projects that a conservative government helps funds, whether it be we're talking about transit, SkyTrain, that we're going to require in the where the stations are high density, so that will actually help with developing rather than just doing more urban sprawl. It's going to be really help to incentivize building density, so that helps with the land, with the environment, but also with the market. And so also, once again, we will not be putting in a capital gains tax when people sell their property. That's very important for their future. And so we want to keep people's money to keep that they've been working towards in their own hands for their future.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ranta?
Small adjustments that result in developers making a bit more profit in one place than another place are not going to solve the problem. For the last 40 years, Canada's been steadily reducing the amount of money the federal government spends on building low-cost housing that people can really afford. A lot of what people talk about now as low-cost housing is, oh, it'll be $2,000 a month to rent or $3,000 a month to rent. That's not going to cut it. We need places that you can rent for $500 a month. That's only going to happen through the federal government building and financing real low-cost housing. And it can be done by cutting out the middleman. There's a lot of parasites in the financial system who will lend money. The Bank of Canada can lend money at no interest anytime. If we've got a big federal project that we need, there's no need to put a middleman financial banking system and parasites. Some of those people sitting on more than 10 million who don't do anything productive. Instead, their investments are making it harder for the rest of us to live a good life, harder to find employees. Second thing, we got to drive down the price of real estate. All these projects are going to be too high because the cost of land is a significant part of any housing project. You're going to build low-cost housing, you're going to build rental housing. The cost of land is too high. We need a severe capital gains tax to be applied on housing. Maybe with a lifetime exemption of $1 million if you own your own home. But other than that, big taxes, no
That's time.
capital gains deduction.
That's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yousef?
Thank you, Mr. Holland. First, I'd like to start off by refuting Mr. Dalton's earlier false claim on taxing the sale of a home. Our proposal is working against flipping. It's an anti-flipping tax, if you will, that requires property to be held for at least 12 months. So please, let's cut down the lies a bit, if I may. Now, moving forward on the rental housing most specifically, we understand that purchases of rental housing are actually done by those who have a significant amount of capital to be able to invest in that. And therefore, we are looking to unlock home ownership through our rent-to-own programs. We are looking to stop renovictions and have stipulations in place against renovictions. We want to provide better housing for our people with disabilities, seniors, the indigenous. We want to build more homes. Ultimately, that is the answer. It's a matter of supply and demand. We want to protect the rights by implementing the Bill of Rights, to make the process of buying a home fairer, more open, and transparent, so as to mitigate some of what was mentioned earlier, be it the middlemen or the parasites or whatever label is put here. But we want to make sure that the process is transparent and fair at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffmann?
You know, I want to reiterate what I said earlier. I think I said earlier that the government provides an environment, and homes and houses are built by people, investors, and developers. We do want to lower the capital gains tax as a party. platform, but it's more actually to encourage Canadians to start to think of frugality and savings and possibly investing to grow something themselves. A lot of government intervention and programming tends to be ending up as a lot of waste. It ends up being policies to look good. There's various examples. I'll give you an example. Vietnam, for example, and I do know Vietnam because I married a lady from Vietnam years ago. I cannot buy real estate in Vietnam. Only a Vietnamese person can. And you know, there's different countries like that that have policies where they look after their own people first. And that's what we should be doing. Looking after Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to give you guys enough time for your 2-minute closing statements, but I'm going to take a question from the audience here, because I believe this is coming. The young people are completely involved in it. A guy my age doesn't understand it at all. But the question is, cryptocurrency, while legal, is being blocked by many banks. What is your thoughts on decentralization, and how would you stop financial institutions from this practice if you would do that? We'll start with Mr. Yousef.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. I, much like yourself, am one who've tried numerous times to understand and wrap my head around cryptocurrency, to no avail, of course. However, now that we're seeing countries in Latin America being able to accept cryptocurrency as an official currency, I think as Canadians, we owe it to our economy and to our fellow Canadians to observe what is happening and to watch as this particular country and group of countries, if possible, start to take on those steps and learn from their mistakes. My experience has always taught me, lessons learned at the end of the day. You don't want to be the first person through the door, but you want to be right there if that door leads to a greater prosperity. Looking at the cryptocurrency structure that is taking place internationally, being able to learn from the lessons of other nations, and then of course seeing how we can best fit that within our economy, I believe would be the most prudent and the most sustainable and manageable way to move forward on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ranta, what are your thoughts on this subject?
Even some progressives like the idea of cryptocurrencies because they think it's going to poke the eye of the financial establishment, the Bank of Canada, and the big banks and the international financiers. But that's a mistake. Cryptocurrencies are another way to divide us, and it's a libertarian's dream. No idea of the common good. Everybody's out there. It's a Wild West. That's wrong. In order to meet the challenges of climate change, especially, which most people are denying, all the major parties seem to be denying it. In order to meet the huge challenges, we're going to have to use every resource we can as a society for the common good. One of the biggest resources society has is its currency and its national bank. We've been misusing it, and we haven't been using it enough. We've got to give governments more control over the money supply and direct it to positive investment rather than real estate inflation or stock market speculation. That type of thing would just get worse with decentralized Bitcoin. We've got to work for the common good. We've got serious challenges. Playing around with childish things like cryptocurrency is hurting the common good, and it's reducing the ability of our society to use the money supply for the good of all of us.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hoffmann, what are your thoughts?
I myself have no experience with cryptocurrency. I've never been involved, so I don't know too much about it. I've heard a lot about it. I believe in something that's real, that you can hold. That's always been the way that I am. Our currency, of course, is fiat, and it's a concept, right? It isn't necessarily backed by anything real. So that's the way I lean. I would say that we have to look into it, of course, and learn and find out what we're dealing with exactly before we make any policies or decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dalton?
Yeah, I believe that this goes beyond cryptocurrency. It touches on open banking and to give people more of a choice and control over their finances. So I think that's certainly something that needs to be investigated more, and we would do so as a conservative government.
Thank you. Mr. Klapwyk?
Thank you, Mr. Holland. I think we're the same age. However, you know, I hear what in part what's Mr. Ranta is saying here, and you know, there is an issue that we face with big banks, and when we see them being propped up and handouts being given to the banks, and then competition diminishing because of it, that's not good for Canadians. And the NDP wants to invest in Canadians and to put workers first, and so we would direct the Bank of Canada to change its mandate, and we would focus on using our resources and our banking tools to invest and in solving the climate crisis that we face. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Mr. Buddle.
Thank you very much. I love the idea of cryptocurrencies, even though I'm completely ignorant on the subject. I think anything that the big banks favor, anything that scares the big banks is something worthy of attention. There is a word that I really would rather not use in this forum that refers to the bonding of business and government, and that has been a rampant issue of government problems and societal problems, which is what World War II was fought against. However, it has risen to become the current prevailing structure of society. So when we have something like cryptocurrency, which allows the individual to guard their own assets through encrypted means, I think that's wonderful. And I really would like for Canadians to become educated on the subject, and perhaps that the concepts of cryptocurrency might be something that should be brought into schools so our young people can understand it, because it's a real thing and it's happening now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I tried to have my 29-year-old son explain it to me the other day, and I just zoned right out. Made no sense to me. Okay, we're going to move into closing statements. We're going the opposite order of how we started. So, Mr. Hoffmann, would you like to give your 2-minute closing statements?
Yes, thank you. We, as the People's Party of Canada, we have to be careful of globalists, and I do feel an urgency regarding this topic. We've got the Great Reset from the Economic Forum. We've got various UN, unelected by us, agendas coming forward affecting Canada. Now, Albert Einstein, I believe, once said the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over, but yet expect a different result. We've had decades of major parties doing that, and we haven't had any improvements. In fact, I see things getting a lot worse. We as a party, the PPC, are not going to make a lot of promises. We're going to keep the promises. On our platform, we've laid out some common sense policies that we are going to keep. We want the best for Canada. Now, the other idea of vote splitting is corrosive. I hear it a lot. We need to really, we need to vote from our heart, really, you know. And I say to everybody out there listening, give us a chance. The question comes up, what do you have to lose? Well, voting for the same old, I'm afraid we could lose everything. So we're real Canadians wanting the best for us. Give us a shot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Yousef.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. I shudder at the real Canadians phrase. Nevertheless, I am in this because I want to be of use to my community. I want to ensure that I am a useful participant in our community. As a business owner operator here in Maple Ridge, I am on the ground. I feel the pains of our business community, be it for having to maintain their safety and security and that of their employees, to having to make payroll and pay all their bills. I will go to Ottawa and fight to finish our fight against COVID-19 by supporting the proof of vaccination credentials and having the mandatory vaccine so we can start traveling on planes and trains freely. I will work to keep Canadians healthy with transformative investments in strengthening our universal public healthcare system in primary care, long-term care, and mental health. I will work diligently to accelerate climate action by creating new green jobs, cutting pollution in the oil and gas sector, and making our communities cleaner with zero emission vehicles and other measures. I will make sure that everyone pays their fair share of taxes, including and especially focusing on big banks and the ultra wealthy. I will work to create safer communities by toughening our laws and supporting our provinces and territories in doing so. I will help Canadians find a home of their own by saving first-time home buyers up to $30,000 and building 1.4 million new homes. I will work to protect the rights of Canadians and take actions against speculators. I will ensure the delivery of the $10 a day childcare and create more childcare spaces. I will work to build a fairer Canada by fighting systemic racism and discrimination and combating hate in all its forms. And I will walk the path of reconciliation by addressing the legacy of colonialism and residential schools. I am a real Canadian, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Klapwyk.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. I'm going to stand in solidarity with my colleague, Mr. Yousef here, calling out the use of the term real Canadians. As the son of immigrants, I find that phrase despicable and demeaning. We're all Canadians here. But I'd like to take an opportunity to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event, and to you, Mr. Holland, as well. Finally, a thank you to the other candidates for agreeing to participate. We all want a better Canada, and we can't build a better Canada without confronting the issues that we face. Now, I've worked in the film and television industry for 25 years, and I've played a leadership role in creating a thriving industry. As the vice chair for the Motion Picture Production Industry Association, I've been able to work with all stakeholders in our sector to ensure that our entrepreneurial business spirit has opened doors to foreign markets and expanded our opportunities. And the same approach is the one that I've used in negotiating billion-dollar contracts with Hollywood employers. A spirit of collaboration and consensus building that results in a positive business environment. This same spirit is what we need in Ottawa to represent the voices of Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge. We need leadership that responds locally, works collaboratively, and has a positive impact on the lives of Canadians in our city. It's clear that as we build back out of this pandemic, we need to build a better Canada. We need to make different choices, and we need to have the courage to change. In the words of Jack Layton, my friends, love is better than anger. Hope is better than fear. Optimism is better than despair. So let us be loving, hopeful, and optimistic, and we'll change the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Buddle.
Thank you very much. This arena for open discussion on matters that are relevant to voters in Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge is most appreciated. The entire Rhino juggernaut is grateful for this opportunity. The frailty of the system was exposed in full splendor as the SARS-CoV-19 situation exploded around the world, and notably here in Canada. And yet, with the previous epidemic virus crises that erupted over the previous 20 years, what was most apparent on countless fronts was the complete absence of a plan of any type. Now, the people that are working in healthcare and the people that are educated, who a year ago were treated as heroes and called heroes, are being called conspiracy nuts, are being condemned and threatened by people in power. The loss of lives is tragic. The destruction of people's livelihoods was and will continue to be devastating unless a new approach is taken, because the tried and untrue is just not cutting it. The intention of this campaign, the Rhino campaign, is not to get into power. I don't want the job. I don't even consent to be governed. You, the people of this wonderful community, have some say in the way you interact with the federal government by putting an X on a piece of cardboard every few years. And you're fully entitled to call that democracy if that's what you want to do. I implore you to think very carefully about that X that you're going to place on a piece of cardboard in a couple of weeks, and to consider which of the candidates available will best serve the needs that you perceive for yourself, for your family, for your neighbors, for your community, and for your world. Thank you, Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge, for being a fantastic place to have spent the last 21 years. Vote Rhinoceros. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dalton.
It's been a tremendous honor to represent this community nationally. I have a vision for Canada. I'm Indigenous, I'm Métis, and I'm proud of my heritage. On my mom's side, I'm French Canadian, raised up in a Canadian military home, lived across Canada. My dad was in the Air Force. I served in the military also, been a school teacher here locally for many years, and love this country, love this community. And there's a saying that all politics are local. And for me, job one is to represent individuals at the national, at the local level. You know, I've done that. I've done that all my years as a elected official. You know, simple things, I've had to work hard, could be getting a school in Albion. That school, Tescanella, would not be there without my work. Advocating and helping the MRI get built at our hospital, getting another ambulance, keeping the maternity clinic open. These are just some of the things. A big issue that I've heard of, that we've all heard about, is the opioid crises. We've lost 2,500 people to opioid deaths in British Columbia in the past year, as compared to 1,500 from COVID. I've put a motion forward that's been canceled by this unnecessary election in order to put more emphasis, much more emphasis, on treatment and recovery. And that is a commitment that we will do as a conservative government, is to put focus on recovery. This election is a choice between a comprehensive conservative plan to deliver jobs for all Canadians and restore public finances versus a reckless liberal plan supported by the NDP that would leave Canada with higher levels of debt and unemployment. The question that you need to ask is, who will create jobs in Canada's economy back on track, and who will be able to get us out of this recession in good shape? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ranta.
I'm a citizen, first of all. I'm not running because I want a career, or I want to be part of a group of people, or have an identity, or feel important. I'm running because I really care about our future. And I'm convinced that a vote for any of the major parties is sending the wrong message. Let's look at the commitments that Canada's made about the biggest issue facing us. We've broken them all. 1992 Earth Summit, 2002 Kyoto Protocol, 2009 Copenhagen Accord, 2015 Paris Agreement. Since the Paris Agreement in 2015, every other G20 country except the United States and Canada has reduced their GHG emissions. Under Trump, the Americans increased theirs by 0.3%. Under the Liberals, we increased ours by 3.8%. Can't go on. Thomas, we got a big challenge with climate change. We've got to mobilize every resource we can. Thomas Piketty proved several years ago in the book Capital that a capitalist society only works when wealth is redistributed. A 1% wealth tax is nothing. People with over 10 million are increasing their wealth by an average of 7% a year. And there's no way you can believe anybody is committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions if they support the mega projects of LNG. That is so wrong that whenever I listen to whatever the parties say about their climate plans, I just think they're lying. Don't send the message that you want to support the climate destroyers. Let's get motivated and solve this problem the best we can.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. And I do want to thank you very much. That was, I know it was just under 2 hours, and I understand you're busy people, but thank you for your time. I wish you all good luck on the rest of your campaign. Looking forward to seeing you out there somewhere. I also want to thank the audience for attending. Stepping up to inform yourself is a very important part of democracy. You don't have to stop here. I encourage you to go to each party's website and check out their platforms on your own. And that's really it. Is there anything more from Flory? Here she comes.
I don't know where my video is, but
We can do it again.
oh, there we go. Yeah, let's just
There you
start
go.
all over again. Sure. I just wanted to thank staff for getting everything organized, and I'm not sure why I look like that. There we go. And being here and again, like, reiterate what Ken said. Thank you everyone who's attended and wanted the information. I think that's an important step in why we're here and what we need to do moving forward. Again, my opening statement was that we were here to provide information to voters, and many of those being undecided. So I appreciate that that was your focus. And so again, thank you. And as Ken said, good luck with the rest of your campaigns, and we will see you around.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thank you.